You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we are starting a new feature called Cricket Throwback, reviewing old games of cricket. Today's Cricket Throwback is Amazing Adelaide 2006-7 between Australia and England. This test match will be remembered as one of the best Ashes test matches ever. What made Amazing Adelaide amazing? Well, it was one of the best Ashes test matches ever, up there with Edgbaston 2005, Headingley 1981, and Headingley 2019. It had it all. The drama, thrilling finish, standout performances with bat and ball, a showcase of what test cricket is, a test over 5 days. Heading into the second test match, Australia were leading the series 1-0 after winning the first test match at the Gabba by 277 runs. Great start for Australia in their quest to regain the Ashes after losing them in England in 2005. England were looking to bounce back after losing in Brisbane. What we didn't know, that we were in for an amazing test match that will go down as one of the best in Ashes cricket. Let's have a look at both teams' 11s for this second Ashes test match from the Adelaide Oval. We'll start with Australia's 11. Justin Langer, Matthew Hayden, Ricky Ponting, Damian Martin, Michael Hussey, Michael Clarke, Adam Gilchrist, Shane Warne, Brett Lee, Stuart Clark, and Glenn McGrath. Let's have a look at England's 11. Andrew Strauss, Alistair Cook, Ian Bell, Paul Collingwood, Kevin Peterson, Andrew Flintoff, Geraint Jones, Ashley Giles, Matthew Hoggard, Steve Harmison, and James Anderson. Brilliant players on both teams. You look at this Australian team, packed of legends, and you knew when these players played, Australia were in good hands. This England team from 2006-7 had many great players who had long, successful test careers, and future England captains like Andrew Strauss, Alistair Cook, and Kevin Peterson. Also England's future leading run scorer and wicket taker in Alistair Cook and James Anderson. Let's have a look at the match summary from the second Ashes test match from the Adelaide Oval between Australia and England. England batted first and made 6 for 551 declared in their first innings. Paul Collingwood top scored with 206, and Stuart Clark took 3 wickets for Australia. Australia in reply, all out for 513. Ricky Ponting top scored with 142, and Matthew Hoggard took 7 wickets for England. England in their second innings, all out for 129. Andrew Strauss top scored with 34, and Shane Warne took 4 wickets for Australia. Australia needed 168 runs to win. They chased down the runs easily to finish on 4 for 168. Michael Hussey top scored with 61 not out, and Andrew Flintoff took 2 wickets for England. Australia won by 6 wickets, and Ricky Ponting was named man of the match. Let's have a look at Australia's performance in this test match. We'll start with their batsmen. Langer 4 and 7, Hayden 12 and 18, Ponting 142 and 49, Martin 11 and 5, Hussey 91 and 61 not out, Clark 124 and 21 not out, and Gilchrist 64. Let's have a look at their bowlers. 5 wickets for Warne, 3 wickets for Lee, 4 wickets for Stuart Clark, and 2 wickets for Glenn McGrath. That's how Australia performed as a team in this test match. Let's have a look at England's team performance in this test match. We'll start with their batsmen. Strauss 14 34, Cook 27 9, Bell 60 and 26, Collingwood 206 and 22 not out, Peterson 158 and 2, Flintoff 38 not out and 2, and Jones 1 and 10. Let's have a look at their bowlers. 3 wickets for Flintoff, 2 wickets for Giles, 8 wickets for Hoggard, no wickets for Harmison, and a wicket for Anderson. That's how England performed in this test match as a team. What was the key factor in this test match? The key factor that helped Australia to win this test match was Australia's attitude, mindset, and mentality, and Shane Warne. Those were the 2 factors that was the difference in Australia winning the test match and England losing the test match and eventually losing the Ashes series 5-0. Let's look at both teams' approaches in this test match, where it went right for Australia and where it went wrong for England. Where did it go right for Australia? Well, Australia lost the toss and conceded 551 in the first innings. You know at Adelaide, when you lose the toss, you are going to be in a lot of pain because Adelaide's such a good batting surface. Australia's mentality, mindset and attitude was a negative one. Way behind in the match, most teams don't win a game when conceding 500 plus in the first innings, let alone draw it. Australia winning the test match was a long way away. So heading into their first innings, that's where it started to change for Australia. Australia batted well and were bowled out for 513. Good contributions from Ponting, 142, Clark, 124, Hussey, 91, and Gilchrist, 64, got Australia to that 513 score. The key moment in that innings is when Ponting was dropped by Ashley Giles. If that catch was taken, Australia wouldn't have got to 513. But Ponting went on to score 142, which was a man of the match performance, and that's where it changed for England and started to go wrong for them. But more on that later when we discuss where it went wrong for England. After that brilliant display of batting from Australia, they got within 38 runs of England on the first innings, and that's where they sort of believed that they could win this test match. This is where the game turned towards Australia, and this is where their attitude, mindset and mentality won them this test match. I wanted to touch on attitude here because this is where Australia won this game. Their attitude won them this test match. What does attitude mean? Attitude is the state of mind which you approach a situation or look at the world. Also, attitude is a choice. You can choose between a positive or negative attitude. And attitude has an effect on your performance in a game or in everyday life. The situation for Australia was this. They got within 38 runs, got back to some sort of parity on the first innings. They needed to get 10 wickets to bowl England out, then chase down the runs to win the test match, but time was against them. Australia late on day 4 were able to get England one down for 31 at stumps on day 4. Australia started to believe that they could win, but they weren't convinced. But this is where Shane Warne comes in to help Australia win the test match. He believed that Australia could win despite the odds. He decided to choose a positive attitude to this situation. Now we know what attitude is, but attitude also can be internal and external. Internal attitude is how we think and how we feel, our mindset. This is the voice inside that can send positive messages and reinforce positive behaviours, or it can eat away at our confidence. This can be emotionally and physically draining. Internal attitude is the way we communicate this mindset to others. Our behaviour is the personification of our attitude. Shane Warne's internal attitude was a positive attitude. The voice inside was telling him to be positive and that Australia can still win this test match. But other members of the team weren't so sure about their chances, and their internal attitude was one of a negative attitude. So heading into day 5, England were 1 for 31, with Strauss and Bell at the crease. England's chances of winning the test were slim because time was against them, and they needed to score enough runs and take 10 wickets on the last day. So England's attitude and mindset was a negative attitude because they were batting for a draw, and that's where it started to go wrong for England, but more on that later. But this is where Shane Warne came into his own. He picked up the wicket of Strauss, which was controversial because Strauss didn't hit the ball. Then Bell was run out after Warne knocked the stumps over to assist Michael Clarke with the run out. Then Warne removed Peterson, bowled around his legs. This is where Warne's external attitude rubbed off on the rest of the team. When he took those wickets, the way he communicated his mindset to the rest of the team by taking those wickets, it showed the rest of the team that we could win this test match, and it also showed that positive attitude. From that moment on, Australia believed that they could win, and their internal attitude, that voice was telling them that we could do this, and reinforced that positive attitude, and it benefited their performance greatly. With the positive attitude Australia had, they bowled England out for 129, they chased down the target of 168, and won the test match by 6 wickets. Australia's attitude, mindset and mentality, and having Shane Warne on their side, helped them win this test match and eventually the series 5-0. This is what made this Australian team great. Every situation that was presented to them after Adelaide, they approached it with a positive attitude, and it showed in their performance. And that was the difference between them and England in this series. After Adelaide, Australia won the series 5-0. Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath and Justin Langer retired. Ricky Ponting became the first Australian captain since Warwick Armstrong in 1920-21 to win a clean sweep in an Ashes series. Australia retained the Ashes after losing them in 2005, and it was all down to their attitude, mindset and mentality. This will go down as one of Australia's greatest ever Test victories. Where did it all go wrong for England? Well, England won the toss and batted first and made 6 for 551 declared in their first innings. Hundreds from Collingwood, 206, and Peterson, 158, got them to that score. England feeling positive about their chances of winning this Test match. So runs on the board, head of the game, good position with 551, can't lose a Test match from that position. The mentality, mindset and attitude of England was positive. There was a sense of self-belief that England could win this Test match and level the series at 1-1 heading into the third Test match in Perth. But all that positive mindset and self-belief were quickly dashed when Australia batted first in their first innings. Australia batted well, got back to some sort of parity in the first innings, scoring 513. Hundreds from Ponting and Clark and half-centuries from Hussey and Gilchrist got them back within striking distance. The costly drop catch of Ricky Ponting off Ashley Giles, that's where it started to go wrong for England. And that's where their mindset and self-belief changed in this Test match. After dismissing Australia for 513, England had a lead of 38 runs heading into the second innings late on day 4. At that stage of the match, England's chances of winning the match were slim. They needed to score enough runs to put themselves in a strong position to win the Test match. They needed to take 10 wickets on the last day to win, but time was against them. This is where it started to go wrong for England. This is where England's mindset, mentality and attitude cost them this Test match. The mental side of the game is very important, because if you have the right mindset, mentality and attitude, it can have an effect on your performance. England's approach to their second innings, their attitude they chose, was a negative attitude, and that affected their performance. We go back to what attitude means. Attitude is the state of mind which you approach a situation or look at the world. Also, attitude is a choice between a positive or negative attitude. England heading into this situation of the match, they chose a negative attitude because they wanted to play for a draw and bat for time and wanting to keep a 1-0 deficit heading into Perth. So England adopted that negative attitude into their second innings. At the end of day 4, England were 1 for 31 with Strauss and Bell at the crease and Cook fell just before the end of play. Heading into day 5, we saw that negative attitude in front of our eyes. England completely went into shutdown mode / energy saver mode, not looking to score, getting bogged down. By doing that, it was getting Australia back into the Test match. Then the pressure went on England. They started to lose wickets, and the odds of them drawing the Test was slowly disappearing. That was the cause by not having a positive attitude. Not looking to win the Test, not risking losing the game to win it. Their external attitude was a negative mindset, and it rubbed off on the rest of the team. England were eventually bowled out for 129, set Australia 168 to win off 36 overs. Australia eventually chased the runs down to win by 6 wickets. It was England's attitude, mindset and mentality that cost them this Test match, and it cost them the series as well. After Adelaide, England didn't really recover, and their attitude towards the remaining Test matches was a negative attitude, and it had a big impact on their performance for the rest of the series. Their internal attitude, the voice was telling them that we can't beat this Australian team, and their external attitude, the way they communicated their mindset to each other, was a negative attitude as well. After regaining the Ashes for the first time since 1989 and 2005, England's hopes of regaining the Ashes in Australia were quickly dashed after Adelaide, and they never recovered and eventually lost the series 5-0. The difference between them winning and losing the Ashes was their attitude, mindset, and mentality. What are my thoughts on this Test match in general? It was one of the greatest Ashes Test matches ever, up there with Edgbaston 2005, Headingley 1981, and Headingley 2019. But it's a prime example of what the right attitude, mindset, and mentality can do in a game of cricket and in our everyday lives. If you approach a match with the right attitude, it can have a big impact on your performance as a player and as a team. Attitude is a choice. You can choose to be positive or negative, but whichever one you choose will have a big impact on your performance and in everyday life. This test match showed us that no matter how far behind you are in the game, you can still win a game from any position. It showed us that attitude plays a big part in the game of cricket. With the right attitude, you can achieve anything. Attitude is such an important skill that all cricketers need to know and master, because that can be the difference between winning and losing a game. We saw in this test match Australia choose a positive attitude, whereas England chose a negative attitude. That was the difference in this game, going Australia's way, and England losing this match and eventually losing the series. But this test match will be remembered as one of Australia's greatest ever test victories and one of the best ever Ashes test matches we've ever seen. Hope you enjoyed this cricket throwback on Amazing Adelaide 2006-7. It was fun reminiscing this amazing test match in Ashes history. Stay tuned because more cricket throwbacks are coming your way. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. And like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Until then, keep safe and bye for now.